if you're watching on YouTube, you've probably already noticed our change of scenery. We have Mackenzie Richards, and she is a wedding and event coordinator.
Met them, put down the deposit, and some of the pictures, and I was like, oh no, this isn't it.
Was how much time it would actually take to plan everything, or that paying for a planner would actually pay off in the long run.
This is The Guide Gals, a modern wedding-focused podcast by the experts at Here Comes the Guide. I'm Chelsea, a designer and inspired creative who's probably racked up over 5,000 hours on Pinterest, and the friend who's going to shoot it to you straight.
And I'm Caroline, a social media manager who is obsessed with dogs as ring bearers and will inevitably cry over your wedding video. We've seen it from all sides. We've been brides, planners, bridesmaids, and have worked with standout brands throughout the industry.
Think of us as an extension of your wedding party and hang out with us as we share the ins, outs, ups, and downs of the road to I Do.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to be sharing some things that couples wish they would have known before they started planning their wedding. Just like with anything, no matter how prepared you feel, there are always usually little things that you forget or things that go awry.
Yes, and if you're watching on YouTube, you've probably already noticed our change of scenery. We are together, which is super exciting, and we're also super excited to have a guest with us here today. We have Mackenzie Richards, and she is a wedding and event coordinator. Hey, Mackenzie.
Hello. Hey. So glad to be here.
Yeah, so tell us about yourself.
So, I got married in 2019, and from there, I've been a bridesmaid multiple times, and from there, my sister and I started our own wedding event coordinating business in 2021.
What's the name of it?
Mack Jack Events.
So cute. Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm really excited to have Mackenzie here. Mackenzie and I actually go way back. We started by being in dance together when we were little, right?
Yeah.
And then I actually reached out to Mackenzie at one point because your wedding bouquet was so beautiful.
Thank
and I was
you.
like, where did you get it? When I started planning my wedding. So that was something that I love because you could just tell she has such a knack for these things, and planning and just coordination and all of that stuff. But also, why did you guys end up creating Mack Jack?
Yeah, so like I said, it's my sister and I's business, and my sister is actually 17 years older than me, so we have a big age gap. And whenever I got engaged and I was asking everybody to be in my bridal party, she was like, I'm like a lot older than you, and it's not for me. I don't want to be in the wedding. And so, but I still wanted to include her. I still wanted her to be a part of it. And she's always had like an eye for detail and organization. So I was like, why don't you be our wedding planner? And we'll work through the details all together. And so from there, she killed it. We killed it together. And it went so smoothly. And we were like, let's try this out. Let's do it. So we went and we got our LLC and became official in 2021, and from there we've done lots of different events, but our main focus is weddings. So it's so fun. It's fun getting to work together too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Working with your sister.
Yeah,
That's super fun.
So fun.
Yeah.
As per usual, we do have beverages with us. It's fun to like go together and then find out more about what the other person drinks, although we talk about it on a weekly basis, so like I know at this point. But I did decide to switch it up. So I have a hot coffee with pumpkin, almond, and almond milk. I'm not gonna lie, it's not the best, but I switched it up. Like I switched it from my normal, so that's on me. It's fine. I just love fall beverages, and I thought the toasted almond.
That sounds really good.
It's like kind of overpowering the pumpkin, so it's not balanced well. Anyways.
I have a hot green tea. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. I have a little bit of a cold. So I think this has healing properties, hopefully.
We hope.
Yeah. It'll do something for me. Yeah. What are you drinking?
Yeah, I'm having some nice cold ice water.
Love it.
I'm not a coffee drinker, not a tea drinker.
Okay.
So
your go-to is water?
I just have some water, yeah.
Okay.
Really
yeah,
hydrated.
everyone's on Diet Coke, of course. But
We are lovers of Diet Coke.
Yeah.
Great, you're in good company.
Yes.
Yes, I love this.
So we gathered advice, and in this episode, we're going to read bits of advice that people wrote into us, and it's going to be all about things that people wish they would have known before their wedding day. So, Mackenzie, do you want to start us off? Do you have any advice that you usually give to your clients, or something that you wish that you would have known before your wedding day?
Yeah, so I actually just came across this quote not long ago, and it like resonated so deep with me. So Caroline knows this. I'm very much like a host. Like I want to be doing all the things. I want to make sure everybody else is taken care of and having a good time. And I saw this quote on Pinterest, and it said, at your wedding, you are you're not the host, but you're the guest of honor. And it kind of like set me back a little bit because I think in the moment of my wedding, I wanted to make sure like this was getting done, and that everybody was having a good time. So, and not that I didn't. I loved my wedding. It was so much fun. I was very in the moment, but I still wanted to make sure everybody was happy with what they were doing. And I wish I would have taken a step back and been the guest of honor a little bit more.
You
if
were
that
being
makes
the
sense.
coordinator.
Yeah,
already.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's like a very big tip that we give our clients now is just stay in the moment, stay with your significant other, and just have fun. So
That's really good.
I feel like a lot of us, especially at Here Comes the Guide, can fall into that category
Yeah.
of like wanting to take care of everything, want to make sure everything is perfect, but actually like being present in the moment and enjoying is a good reminder.
It's
Yes.
hard when you're like a type A person
Yes.
and you spend a lot of time with all those details. It's
Yeah.
hard to kind of let go.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to read a piece of advice from Kate, who is also a wedding coordinator. She tells her couples to start with the guest list and build their budget around that. She says you should not go into debt trying to plan a wedding. There is beauty and dreamy days for all budgets. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Like financial issues, I know that we've talked a lot about budgeting in previous episodes, but you definitely don't want to start a marriage in a bad place financially, because it is like the number one riff in marriages, finances, all of that.
And I think we said in another episode, like champagne weddings can happen on beer budget. Like it's just like a little bit of a comparison that we can make. And I think a big way to make that happen is just to really be cognizant of your guest list. Like if you want to have a lot of people there, you are going to have to like really think through your budget very carefully, and the smaller you make it, you may have more freedom within your budget to do more fun things. So I think the guest list can make a big difference in that, as you're thinking about what you want your day to look like and just thinking about that overall budget.
Yeah. I noticed a lot of venues too that we've recently been working with, they offer, I can't remember what they call it, but it's basically like where you can go in a storage area and they have a lot of decorations that you can pick from. And I feel like that's a really good way. Like you're already paying for the venue and most of the time that is included. But just having, being able to go grab a couple things to really make it, special to you and still stay under that budget is really fun.
Yeah,
so true.
It's a great resource.
This next piece of advice comes from Sarah, and there's a couple of different pieces within this. So first, doing with budget, if working with a tight budget, play this or that. That can help you find out what is really a need versus what's a want. And there are no rules. It's your day, so do whatever you want with it. And kind of a good question that she has for us is, what do you want your guests to say about your wedding? And that will lead you to the focus. If you want the focus to be fun, then don't worry about the chair upgrade and invest towards a live band or a 360-degree photo booth. She also recommends to get a day of planner. Don't torture yourself. Don't forget the honeymoon funds. And favors are nice, but late night snacks and donuts are better.
That's all really good. Like I know that people like seem to remember food like the most. So like a late night snack, like people love that. And then also, I know we've talked a lot about non-negotiables before in other episodes, but basically, you and your partner might have certain things for your wedding day that you really want. Like, you have to have that there. So make sure, like, you identify those right off the bat and keep them in mind. Yeah, because,
Honestly,
spend
like
money
now
on
that I'm
those
thinking
things.
about it, donuts might be a non-negotiable. Like, not that I'm getting married, I'm already married, but
For the vow renewal.
But the vow renewal.
Yes.
Then we'll bring back like French fries in the middle of it. Like that's
so
so
good.
good.
Yeah.
I also do love the thought of like what's the focus? Do you want it to be fun? Do you want it to be like whatever you want it to be, have it be that. But I think that does help you make those decisions while you're playing this or that. Like don't forget about whatever your focus is.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, there's so many aspects you can really like get lost. Like all of like the different things that you could possibly think about. All right, so Alicia says to do what is good for you and your partner. So Alicia's situation was that her and her husband are both from different places. Her husband's family was from St. Louis and her family's from Ohio. I actually might have switched those, but they're from different places. And her and her husband live in South Carolina. So 3 totally different places that they live and that their 2 families live. So when they were trying to decide where they were going to get married, she decided to like put their wants first, which I think is great. Like at the end of the day, it is your wedding, and I know that she said that she really wanted to get married on the beach, and you're not going to do that in St. Louis or Ohio. So she said that when it came down to it, she knew that if they gave everyone that they wanted to be there enough notice, and you know, like if they wanted to be there, then they would be there. So that's what they decided to do. But yeah, do what's best for you and your partner. Your family members should hopefully understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple of instances that I've experienced of that. I don't know if you have either, but where there was like one family in Ohio and Pennsylvania, which is like geographically closer, but then the bride's family had just moved to Florida. Like they were in Pennsylvania, so they were trying to figure out like, do we keep it there? Or do we like take advantage of the fact that it's in Florida because we actually would love the beach aspect? And if that's your dream, then absolutely, I'd take that and run with it. Even if you don't have family in that area, like go, go where you want.
Yeah, I do feel like it adds another layer to planning when it's not right in your area. But I think it's as people will make the effort, like especially your family members, they will do whatever it takes to get there. So do what's best for you.
Yeah. Okay, the next piece of advice comes from Jenny, and I really want everyone to know that she is one of the most talented photographers that we've gotten to work with in the past, actually. So I think that makes her piece of advice really interesting because it's that she wishes she would have found a better photographer, or at least put more thought behind finding the right photographer. So she says, "We don't have any wedding photos framed. There was nothing good. 20 years later, it still makes me so sad. Make sure you ask to see multiple full gallery deliveries. Most photographers just post the best of the best images online. So if you're having an inside reception, make sure they know that and they are comfortable with shooting inside at night. Don't be afraid to ask to see other weddings that they've shot inside, like in a similar situation. And the same goes for outside. At the end of the day, all you will have left are those images. So shop around and don't be afraid to ask to see a ton of their work."
Yeah.
And it sounds like maybe that her experience was like if they had an inside part of their reception and none of those photos turned out.
Yeah.
That would be really sad.
Yeah, especially as a photographer, like that was clearly one of her non-negotiables. Maybe that she didn't but like it should be now. Like those things, like really, that means a lot to her if you have a real eye for photography. But yes, I think it's a great advice to like really don't be afraid to shop around. I know like when you're in the planning process too, it can be like, okay, let's get the things checked off the list. But yeah, like spend a few hours on the internet and
if you're looking for a place to go, like talk to a wedding coordinator. I'm sure you have a list of people in your head that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this person.
Yeah, and actually when I was planning my wedding, I did a couple Google searches, found this photographer. It was a husband and wife. Went ahead and I was like, okay, like their pictures look great, and met them, put down the deposit, and then I actually saw their work like tagged, like another couple had tagged them in some of their pictures, and I was like, oh no, this isn't it. And so I talked to my then fiance, not my husband, but I was like, I don't think that we should go with them. Like I just don't like how these ones look. The ones that they showed us were amazing, but these ones that I'm seeing other people tag them in is just not, it's not what I dreamed of.
Yeah.
And so we went ahead and we were like, we're unfortunately not going to go through with this. We lost our deposit, which was several $100s, which stinks in the moment, but I'm so thankful because our wedding pictures that we do have now blow those ones out of the water. Yeah. So it was, I didn't do my job at first. I didn't shop around. I really did. I just wanted to check stuff off the list. Yeah. And they seemed good enough. And then I was regretting it. So thankfully I made the switch.
Yeah.
But
I think you trusted your gut too, because I think sometimes like it can hold you back if you already have the deposit down.
Yes.
But I'm glad you were able to be like, okay, no, like what I want out of this is not this.
Right. Yeah.
Lauren says that she always recommends pre-marriage counseling. She said the wedding is a blast, but it's so important to make sure that you're planning for your actual marriage too. She said that theirs was really beneficial to bring up topics that they hadn't thought to discuss. They chatted about how they would manage money, which she mentions is the leading cause of divorce. and try to determine strengths and weaknesses to work on. She says that they still bring up quotes that they heard or things that they learned during their counseling regularly. And then she said that she did theirs through their church, but she thinks that there are lots of great resources out there for something like that, and there totally are. I know my parents did like premarital counseling through their church too. But yeah, I mean, there's so many resources. You can probably do it online today.
We actually decided to do pre-engagement and premarital.
Oh, wow.
We did also.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah. We were recommended that, and we were like, okay. And we ended up finding our like mentors who we really look up to, and just kind of asked them to do that with us. And they gave us this list of like household things, or just like things that people need to do within the marriage, whether that's like taking care of finances or just like chores. And we each filled it out separately, and then like brought our list together, and it brought up so much great conversation. It was like, oh, like we in our head had already assumed like this was going to happen. I guess it brought out assumptions out into the open, and then started conversation around it. Thankfully, we were on the same page for a lot of those things, so the counseling really worked out in terms of like we got those conversations, and it wasn't just like bad for us, but if we weren't on the same page with something, then great, we had a space where we could talk about that.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. So we did not necessarily like counseling before engagement, but we did a book, and it was kind of the same thing. Like it was, I had my book, he had his book, and we went and filled it out, and it was as detailed as like, what do you want to tell your kids about Santa? I'm like,
oh, that's funny.
Oh, like we never talked about that before. So it was like, like really detailed questions that then again, like we came back together and we talked about it, and it was so interesting because again, especially when you're getting married young, I feel like it's really important because you don't. Like, I didn't even necessarily think of a lot of those things on my own, let alone, like, coming together as a married couple. But the premarital counseling in general, even if you don't do pre-engagement, premarital counseling is really beneficial. And I love that she said, like, they pull out quotes and different things like that. That's really special.
The next thing is from Caitlin, and one thing that she wishes she would have thought about beforehand was how much time it would actually take to plan everything, or that paying for a planner would actually pay off in the long run. So she was a DIY bride on a budget, and she figured she could save a ton of money doing everything herself. But looking back, she believes that the planning process would have been much more enjoyable if she had some help. And she also does second the premarital counseling from before.
Yeah, I mean, like, what is the cost of your sanity, you know? Like, yeah. Because, like, I mean, I know you're, like, a DIY queen, Caroline, but, like, sometimes, you know, you, like, watch a video of something and you're like, and it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't. Like, do you need to be really making, like, all of the centerpieces? You need to be, like, embroidering yourself. I can embroider, like embroidering like your bridesmaids' robes. Like just think about like you did that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
No, but I
said,
no, I think I might have mentioned it in a past episode where I didn't finish the robes. Like
I think you did say. I remember now.
Or maybe we talked about it at some point, but like I didn't finish it because it took so much longer. But that's, I feel like, really where like wedding coordination comes in as well. Like we do say there's a difference between planning and coordination, but at the very least, we always say you should secure a coordinator.
Yes.
For your sanity's sake. Truly. But also like everything will be way more enjoyable.
Yeah, I feel like often when we meet with typically just like the bride, we've been told so many times like, my mom will want us to do this because again, like it typically does fall on a family member, which is so like they should be in the moment with you because it's just I don't know, I feel like a lot of times an aunt gets stuck with running around doing last minute touch-ups or straightening this or fixing the skirt, you know, and it's just, you know, you should be in the moment with your family. So.
I truly have seen so many aunts running around at weddings. That's like
which is amazing to have,
right?
But,
But you don't want them to remember your wedding as being the stressful running around.
Yes.
Yeah. So truly, for everybody's sake, a planner, a coordinator, making sure that happens is really important.
Definitely. And if you do want to DIY some parts of it, like it is special. Like if you like hand make certain things, like something along those lines. But make sure that you pick and choose. Like don't DIY like 100% of everything. Don't do it all yourself. But if you do want to have those special touches, just like one or two things maybe.
Yeah.
Where you should keep it.
Absolutely.
The next piece of advice is from Lisa, and it's also surrounding photography. So she pretty much says the same thing that Jenny said earlier. She said, invest in that photography because it's all that you really have left after that day. She said that she's 21 years into her marriage, and her kids often ask to look at her wedding album, and she cringes every time because, honestly, her photographer was terrible. She said her favorite shots came from friends on that day, and she does not advise depending on that to make it all work. She said she wishes she would have known enough to invest the best chunk of cash in a good photographer who understood her, so understood her vision, what she wanted, maybe even understood her personality. A good photographer will go through and give you at the very least a questionnaire, figure out what your colors are, what they should know a little bit about you and your wedding day before the day.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
A piece of advice from Becca for wedding planning is to make a top 3 priority list and to make that list separately. So each of you lists the most important things that you want from the wedding, and then you can share and discuss those things. You can have each of your families do this too, and anytime you run into questions or disagreements, you can return to that priorities list.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to non-negotiables, but I love the idea of let's make our lists separately and then let's compare. And it's kind of similar to your guys' counseling exercises, it sounds like too.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, I did not, my husband he didn't really want to be involved. I mean, he was supportive of everything, but he just wasn't super active in planning anything with me. But I think it would have been interesting to know, looking back now, I'm I wonder what he did think.
Yeah.
He might not have had any opinion on it. I genuinely have no idea.
Yeah.
But he seemed like he had a great time. And I made sure to include personal touches. So we had he's pizza and burgers.
Awesome.
He could eat it every day. So that's what our cocktail hour was sliders and mini pizzas. So but having that priority list that's a really great idea. I love that.
Yeah, similarly, I didn't ask my husband, really. I think I asked him the color he wanted for his, suit for tux.
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, I wanted the different tones of, a very neutral blush for my bridesmaids. And they all had different dresses, and I was going for this vibe. And then he wanted navy blue, and I remember thinking, of course we'll do whatever you want. But in my head, I was that's so basic, which is super, that's dumb of me, but that's just the way my brain works. And that's what we did. And then we were a COVID wedding, so actually that didn't end up happening. But for some reason, the color was one thing that was a priority. But I think that's only because he didn't really care ultimately as long as we got married.
Right, exactly.
Which is great.
Yes.
That's a great trait to have in a partner.
Yes.
Shannon says to be firm with your boundaries surrounding family members and others' opinions. So if boundaries aren't in place, now is the time to start. No matter what you do, someone will always be unhappy with your plan or some aspect of what you do. So focus deeply on making it about the things that matter to you as a couple. I had a friend that got married, and she had a really controlling, mother-in-law situation. And it sucked for her. I remember going to, her wedding dress appointment with her, and it was, pretty much run by her mother or her future mother-in-law. And, yeah, it was just... it's, stand your ground.
Yeah.
Set your boundary.
It is so hard, though, because I think some people are better at it than others. I'm a people pleaser, so there were a lot of things. I was able to navigate some things as, oh, you're really interested in this. Let me give you this very specific thing that I ultimately don't care that much about. So that I have more control over the things that I do. But everyone wants, your day to be very special. And I think sometimes people go about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so ultimately... prioritizing yourself and your wants, and that is the most important thing. And hopefully you don't have many of those circumstances where it's hard.
Yeah. And those conversations can be difficult too. Hey, no, it's because it can it can sound almost confrontational or I don't want you to be involved. But it's
especially
hard
when it's the other family too.
Yeah.
If it was a mother-in-law, it's hard.
Yes.
It's easy to
Yeah.
mom. Get in a little argument, but it is a tough line to
figure
around.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's important in the long run to set those boundaries. And like you said, if there are little things, if they really want to be involved, oh yeah, like, you can do this. The
Yes.
things that you don't really care so much about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really important for me to set boundaries with our guest list because I wanted to stay. I mean, we had like 120 people, so it wasn't massive and it wasn't like super small, but I was actually at the grocery store here and this lady came up. I've known her forever. She's not somebody that I had ever, thought that I would be invited to the wedding, but she knew that I was engaged and she said, she's like, well, when are you sending my invitation out?
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, what do you say? Because again, like, I'm just like you, Caroline, like, oh, like, we're keeping a very limited guest list. And that was like my answer for that. Happened like 2 or 3 times actually, with people being like, when am I getting my invite? Or I had a couple girls like private message me and be like, hey, like, are we gonna be invited? I'm like, oh wow, like, I would never ask that.
No.
But I mean, yeah, it was hard to have that boundary though,
tough.
being like, no, you're not coming.
That's
in like
good
a
for
nicest
you.
way.
Yeah. It'd be so easy to just be like, oh, I haven't sent them out yet, or like I got lost in the mail,
it's
or,
so
like,
tricky. It's a hard balance.
I had this weird situation too where like I got married like a year after I graduated college and I was still close with some people. But even then, like, there were every guest list has limitations.
Yeah.
Like, just no matter how big or small it is, like, truly there is a small portion of people who have, like, they could invite whoever they wanted. I was not one of those people, and so everyone has like a secondary list where you can add people to it if you do end up having some room. But even that was hard to navigate, like figuring out how to tell people, like, oh, now you're getting invitation after everyone got theirs like a month ago. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to have a B list, and that sounds awful to say too, but they were just like people who I would love to have had there, but every guest list has limitations. Other thing too, don't ask if you're invited. I just
That's
really,
a great piece of advice.
Yeah, I really am like, that's crazy to me. If you're, I mean, there are, again, very small set of, I think, circumstances that warrant asking. Most cases, default, don't ask.
Yeah.
I've never.
Or if you get a +1,
don't ask.
I don't like that either.
Yeah.
That's really, yeah.
Especially
if we've been dating like 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, yeah. Our next piece of advice comes from Lisa saying, tackle any hard or awkward conversations about guest lists or finances out the gate. And include anybody that will have vested interest in these things, such as family members if they are paying. And don't put this off, as it will be much more difficult to deal with this further into the process. Set a time, open a glass of wine, and practice those good conflict resolution skills in a calm manner. I love this.
Yeah.
I love this piece of advice. I feel like it's true for a lot of different areas. But I like the note too of like including all the people who need to be in on that conversation. There's so many expectations when it comes to a wedding, and everyone's is a little bit different, and just depending on the role you play, your personality, just things like that. And so I think getting all the expectations out there from the get-go is super helpful, and just including everyone in that conversation so everyone can be on the same page.
Yeah, I love that.
The last piece of advice is from Kelly. She says to choose your bridal party wisely. All parties have to be clear when it comes to the financial and time commitment that they are expecting or willing to accept. So you want to have a clear breakdown of the costs associated with the bachelorette trip and wedding day necessities. This could include dress, jewelry, shoes, hair, makeup, nails, etc. And also, like, you have to remember that, like, I mean, when it comes to, like, pictures and stuff, too, like, they're going to be, like, a huge part of your pictures, like, for your day, like, the memories, like, I don't know. I think, like, it's best to, like, keep it smaller than, like, huge. I don't know, like, just the people that matter most to you.
Yeah,
probably.
Don't feel like you need to extend your bridal party because you want it to be bigger for some reason. I've heard some people say that, like, oh, I just, like, pulled in whoever because of whatever reason.
Well, it doesn't have to match either. Like, if like one side has 4 people and the other side has 6, like, who cares? It's fine.
That's exactly what we had. We had 4 on one side, 6
Really?
on the other. Yeah, and I like struggled with that at first because it was like visually it's just not going to add up, and it was perfect. It was fine. Yeah.
I had 8 and my husband had 7. And I have a lot of sisters, so like that played into it too. But we also, again, because our wedding was totally different from what we had planned. A lot of his groomsmen couldn't make it. And so we just decided to like mix it. So there was like even amount of people on each side, but some of my girls who were technically in like my bridal party were on his, like we had just had it like combined because truthfully their reason for being there was to stand beside both of us.
Yeah.
So like ultimately doesn't matter what side they stand on, doesn't matter how many are on like up there. And I also think I've seen so many like horror stories on TikTok or Instagram of like bridal party situations going totally awry or just huge fights happening from things. So good to set your expectations. Definitely try not to make really big expectations, and if you do, make sure you lay them all out there. I hate looking at the stories where it's like this friendship of years and years and years was lost over something to do with the bridal party.
Have either of you heard of like the bridal party contracts?
I've seen them.
What do you feel about that?
Have you seen them?
No, explain.
Okay. So there have been like to the degree of like contracts or like PowerPoints of like these are the expectations. And you have to
before
sign,
you
like,
say yes.
Yes.
Like if I was like, hey Chelsea, would you be in my wedding? I'd love to have you a bridesmaid. Here's like the expectations.
Yeah.
Before you say yes or no.
In some ways, I'm like, okay, and that's actually, if it's done well,
yes,
I can get behind it. Absolutely, if it's done well. It shouldn't feel super transactional, though. Like, I really think that's the part that irks me if it becomes, like, transactional. Like, I want you to do all of these things for me, so can you say yes? Instead of it being so driven by, like, I want you to be there. Can you do these things? If not, don't feel like you have to say yes.
Yeah.
Just know that, like, these are kind of the things that we need. So, yeah, it can be done well, but I think I've seen so many of that go poorly.
Right. Yeah, it's like it has to be a good balance, I feel like. There is a good balance between here's what everything's going to cost. Like maybe, I don't know, I think about like bridesmaids that maybe you already have a family. Like, that can be a huge burden to be in a wedding. Or, financial burden, I should say. So having that listed out would be possibly nice for some people, but other people it might be really kind of just awkward and intimidating.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it.
I have seen. I haven't seen the contracts. I probably will now.
Yeah.
But I have seen just like people talking about like the responsibilities that go with being in someone's wedding party and like. Oh, like it's such a big expectation. I have to spend thousands of dollars on this bachelorette trip, and like it seems like there's a lot involved. And I have seen like people kind of complaining about it and saying, like I'm going broke from being in my friends' weddings. So I think that like if you are expecting your wedding party to have lots of costs associated with it, like if it's going to be a really expensive like girls' trip involved. I think maybe it doesn't have to be in the form of a contract, but like lay it out. Like, hey, this is going to cost a lot of money. Like, are you able to do this? And like, as the bride, maybe be like, or groom, or maybe be understanding of, your friend's financial situations. Like, I don't know. Yeah. If your friend just started a family and like, or like your friend just got out of college is like looking for a full-time job or something, like, be realistic with like like maybe you guys aren't gonna go to like Aruba like on your bachelor like be realistic with those things. And
as always, like we're big fans of good communication. Just throughout the whole wedding process. I think that's another piece of advice to leave you with is like good communication across the board is going to be great, whether that's with your bridal party, your family members, your vendors, like just across the board. Laying out expectations, thoughts, and also just being okay, especially with a bridal party, if ultimately they say no. Because we hope that this episode was super helpful. Thank you to everyone who gave us these pieces of advice. It's always so nice to think about all the things that you have to think about even before you start the planning process or really no matter where you are. So we hope this is helpful to you. And just thank you so much, Mackenzie, for being on and just sharing all of your tips and advice. And we would love to know about where we can find you or keep up with you after this episode.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is so fun. So you can follow us at Mack, M-A-C-K, and Jack, J-A-C-K, Events on Instagram. And also Facebook. We're still working on all the social medias, but
Yeah. Oh my gosh, good. We can follow along with all of the fun stuff that you're doing.
Thank you guys so much. This was so fun.
Yeah, it was so fun having you here. And if you guys have a story to share, or if any of this was helpful to you, we'd love to hear it. You can find us on Instagram at The Guide Gals Podcast. You can watch us on the Here Comes the Guide YouTube channel. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts as The Guide Gals Podcast. Lastly, you can visit our website, theguidegalspodcast.com. There you'll be able to see show notes from every episode, and you can view our full episode library. We have lots of resources for planning, wedding trends, all kinds of things. And we're always happy to hear from you, like I said. So you can always drop us a line on our website, too. We have a contact page there. I think that's all from us today.
Seriously, guys, we do love when you keep up with us, when you let us know how things are going, if you ask questions and things, because we want to walk alongside you in the wedding planning process. Like, that's why we're here. That's why we get to have fun guests that get to further that. So we're just so glad to be here and for us to be in your earbuds today.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
So until the next episode, cheers.
Cheers.
Cling.